So thank you all for joining us this afternoon for Tech Tuesday. Tech Tuesdays are hosted by the MCA Innovation Center, which is a hub for entrepreneurs and innovators. The Innovation Center provides resources, education, the critical connections, and a collaborative workspace to launch and grow technology-focused ventures. So you can find out more about the Innovation Center at our website, which is at mcamericas.org. So Tech Tuesdays is our monthly series where we feature innovators, entrepreneurs, and resource experts in a discussion of topics relevant to startups. This year, we're focusing the entire series on sources and pathways to innovation, and we're calling this Fueling Innovation. Before I turn you over to Alberto Ponce, a member of our team, who is the one coordinating these sessions, I want to mention a few housekeeping items. So please keep yourself muted during the discussion. If you have any questions, put them in the chat box and we'll get to them as we go along. And finally, we are recording the program, so we will send, if you would like to see it afterwards, there'll be a link on our YouTube site, or you can always reach out to us for that link. And with that, I'll turn it over to Alberto.
Time tracking is fun, said no one ever.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this Tech Tuesday, Fueling Innovation Through Education. With us is Vianey Romo and Joseph Sapien. Vianey Romo is the workforce coordinator at the AMCA, where her responsibility is to work the K-12 education pipeline in promoting the healthcare workforce in El Paso Norte region. She hosts STEM camps for middle school students at the MCA. In addition, she co-wrote a STEM Innovation Lab workbook, which I'm gonna just quickly share my screen. This workbook is the one that's showing up on everyone's screens. It's a recently published work, and many teachers and parents have been using it for STEM education. Okay. Currently, she is enrolled in the Johns Hopkins University Carey Business School, pursuing her master's degree in healthcare management. With us also is Joseph Sapien, is currently the executive director of the STTE Foundation. He's also an artist, technologist, and entrepreneur. Joseph is an education pioneer and has created novel programs that advance youth in the areas of entrepreneurship and STEAM. Currently, he is designing and deploying the first in the world augmented reality science fair, sponsored by the El Paso Electric and Microsoft. And I'm gonna share a bit of a short trailer. Great. So, of course, I'm going to share that.
Good afternoon. My name is John Fitzpatrick.
Sorry about that. Of course, I'm going to share that trailer, that link in the chat box so everyone can join this science fair. And without further ado, welcome Vianey and Joseph. First, to kick off the conversation, I would like you to tell us a little bit more about your program. You're having really exciting stuff. You're working with really exciting programs on the STEAM front. So Vianey, could you start, please?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the invitation, Alberto and Nancy here at Protect Tuesday. Parts of our program is to create outreach opportunities and resources for our students so they're more aware of the life sciences industry here in El Paso. You know, there's stigma that when you think about healthcare and life science, especially at a young age, they only think about doctors or nurses, when in reality, there's a huge amount of career possibilities in that life sciences industry that they're just not aware of. So my job particularly is to create that awareness and say, hey, not only can you be a doctor or a nurse, but you can work in the biomedical device, you can work in clinical trials, you can work as a lab tech, you can, you know, the possibilities really are endless. So part of that is us working to create a STEM camp, which we did, and we inaugurated that in 2019. Throughout that program, we saw over 300 students. It was a one-day STEM camp where we helped bring in one class per day, and they would go through a tour of the MCA. They would go through all the programs. We would have guest lectures from researchers, people who had their own startups, and then we would finish off with hands-on experiments where they would have like a really fun time interacting with different people that they wouldn't know exist. And they got to do like fun things like making things explode, and we extracted DNA out of strawberries. And then all of that, we got to link it to workforce careers. So we work with Workforce Protocol Solutions and getting that data and getting it to them so they know, hey, I don't have to be a doctor to just make over $100,000. And then I don't have to spend 10 to 12 years in school when there's all these other possibilities. Obviously, COVID put a huge dent in our program, and we had to cancel a lot of our program due to it. So what we ended up doing is, after some strategic planning in the summer with parents, teachers, and students, we wrote a book. So the workbook that you showed for us was a really amazing work that I did with an intern in the summer, where we wrote it, we added chapters, more information on the MCA. So essentially our STEM camp in words. So we distributed it. We just released it like a month and a half ago, and it's been a real hit. In hoping that, you know, it creates that awareness in students and parents as well, because sometimes parents don't know the careers that are out there and are pushing their kids to do something else. And then also for teachers to use it in the classroom if they can. But this was mostly a resources for everybody to use during this whole crazy time that we call COVID.
Yeah. Where can the anybody access this workbook? Is it available on the MCA website?
Yes, so you can find our workbook. It's free. So you can either get a hard copy by contacting me, and I'll put my email on the chat box so everybody has it, or you can find it for free as a PDF on our website. And it's about 50 pages, and it has a bunch of resources from experiments to periodic table of careers to just some other resources in the STEM field as well.
Great. Awesome. Joseph, could you tell us about your programs?
Sure. First, I'd like to thank the MCA and Emma Schwartz for her leadership, as well as Vianey. It's awesome being on this presentation with you, and thank you, Alberto and Nancy. Yeah, I mean, our programs are like Vianey said, you know, COVID was a definite impact to us pivoting our programs. So what we had to do, what we were good at, which was in person, we had to basically say, okay, we have to go virtual. And this adoption of technology acceleration, we had to ride that wave. And so how do you do that? By being effective. We created the first ever AR science fair, which is basically, you know, a new way, a novel way for kids to take their science fair projects and digitize them. And then on top of that, layer augmented reality. So really just getting kids acclimated with these cutting edge technologies that are going to be coming with the AR glasses and you know, incorporating, trying to build confidence. So I think that's critical. We also have entrepreneurship program that we do in augmented reality. So first of its kind, getting kids to be immersed in learning, which is critical when you're talking about engagement and comprehension with kids. And then we also built SayWhat.tv, which is real news specifically around STEAM and entrepreneurship. So giving kids accurate, you know, canceling the conspiracy theories that these kids listen to nowadays, and the world is not flat. So we're real with kids, but we're also pushing innovation with our programs and keeping them, you know, immersed in education.
Great. You both touched on the topic of COVID, and I would like to circle around to that a bit later. But right now, the big question that I would like to ask is, what would be the difference between your programs and regular education? Well, not just obviously on the topics, but what values or what structure is central to your programs that regular education or any other kid wouldn't have. I would like to start with Vianey, please.
Sorry, I was muted. I keep doing that every single time. I still haven't gotten used to it. So I can go ahead and start with that. So regular education, as we all know, it's very kind of structured for testing, right? That's how they do every school year. It's like they make sure that all the components that they get tested on are taught throughout the year. So what is different from mine is that not only are we teaching the science concepts that you would be teaching in a science class like biology, chemistry, physics, coding, but you're incorporating those workforce life data that you don't get in a classroom. In the classroom, you get, the what is biology, what is an organism, what is oxygen, hydrogen, but here you're getting, okay, you know about that and you know about the periodic table, but how does that even link to the career that you may want to do for the rest of your life? So that's a big part of what we do, is incorporating that life sciences data and continuing that conversation of what is the life sciences industry in the curriculum itself. So adding the experiments, adding the data really adds like a whole other level to education.
Okay, so linking it directly to the workforce and all that, that's great. Joseph, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll briefly touch on that. I agree with VNA on the testing, and schools have certain requirements that they have to follow and improve their performance. So, being a nonprofit, we have more flexibility to be innovative, where we're not, we don't have those standards to say, okay, well, we have to have our students pass tests. So, really, when that, we had a E-Series panel last year when COVID, and we had superintendents, we had Educate Texas and various partners that participate in that. But one of the comments that came out of it from JJ Childress and Microsoft was small data, and that's really going to, it highlighted the education sector in a sense of like, okay, if we have all this data specifically to individuals, how can we use that data to help them accelerate their process of learning? So I think that's very intriguing when it comes to artificial intelligence. It's scary, but it's also something that I think COVID is going to bring out, in the fact of, hey, if we have kids that are learning at a faster pace, and the data tells us that they can accelerate their learning, as a parent and a father, I would welcome that, to say, hey, can I put my kid in that specific path? So, we have a little bit more flexibilities where our differentiation, Alberto, is we can be innovative, we can pivot quicker. We're not an institution, and so that gives us the ability to create and implement and deploy what we want to do versus what we're required to do. So I think that pretty much sums it up.
Also,
Okay.
if I could add a little something to that, Joseph, I completely agree with you. And something that comes with like AI and innovation and entrepreneurship is you're making the kids think out of the box. They never really kind of put so much focus on entrepreneurship and, hey, you can own your small business if you have this really awesome idea. But now you're putting these new ideas, saying like augmented reality. I think this is awesome, because by the time these kids are in high school, in college, out in the workforce, the technology is going to be so much more different than it is right now. So getting them prepared for that and implementing that idea now is going to make a huge difference then.
Great. So you both talk about innovation and being able to decide your own programs, decide what you educate. So regarding to the complete topic of the Tech Tuesdays on innovation, how would you define educating for innovation? What does that mean for you? And could you define education for innovation? Let's start with Joseph now.
Yeah, I really like this question, Alberto. I think anytime you talk about innovation, you have to think about cutting edge type stuff and futuristic approaches. So for me and my foundation, it's really about understanding the characteristics of Generation Z and that segmentation, right? So they're hyper connected individuals. The Gen Z cares about causes. They like customization and personalization. If you think about like Spotify and Netflix, how everything is custom built to a specific individual. So when we were younger, we didn't have that type of data that was custom. We watched Nickelodeon, and what was ever on Nickelodeon was what we were consuming. So this new generation, Gen Z, and then now there's discussions on Generation C, which obviously the C is for COVID. But that generation is between 2016 and 2030. So what we have to do as leaders of educators and innovation is figure out how can we best be effective to that generation or to Gen Z or Gen C, so that way we can be effective. Without understanding them, we're going to miss the mark. And so I think, innovation and technology is always going to evolve exponentially. But how can you make sense of it to a kid and say this is important? Back when we were doing STEM in 2000 and what was it, 2009? Nobody knew what STEM was. Big cities knew what it was, but El Paso still didn't know. So we got like Estela Casas and had her resonate with the community. So being able to effectively communicate with students on innovation, I think, is critical.
Great. So if I got the point correctly, is you focus on the student, and through that you develop, okay, these are their needs, this is what they want, and the innovation part comes depending on that comes after. So it's not like a universal form of educating innovation. It's more of a generation by generation basis. But that's very interesting. Vianey, do you have anything to add?
I mean, I think Joseph really hit it out of the ballpark, but during this whole innovation, and I think we've learned throughout COVID, we're engaging students in ways we've never had before. And we've learned that students are able to adapt much more quickly than I think us as adults. They were able to, go into virtual learning from one to the next throughout this whole COVID. And as Joseph said, innovation is expanding exponentially every single year. Something new is going to come out. So it's up to us to make sure how to describe it as well as possible to our kids and say, hey, like, this is what the next big thing is. What is it, how you're going to react to that, and how are they going to critically think and analyze and maybe solve issues that you don't see as an adult, and then that's how they become innovative.
So how does this, like, specifically, if you could give us examples, how does this translate to your programs? What decisions or aspects of the programs have come from this?
So innovation is a huge part of our program, especially with like the Innovation Center. And I try to really implement the idea of innovation, startups, tech startups in any way that I can when I'm talking to kids. And a great way in explaining this is always kind of talking about the big name companies that these kids know. Like there's like the Microsofts, the Apples, that they're like, oh, like I didn't know that once was a startup. And back in the day when Apple first started was the 1970s, and it was a wooden box with a keyboard, and now it's something that everybody usually has an iPhone or something like that. So talking about them, how a startup works initially, and then connecting those lines to say, hey, like if you have a small idea, or if you have an idea and you see that technology is changing, or if you see that something's wrong, you can change that. You don't have to be sitting there kind of seeing it continue going wrong. And then just talking about how innovation is fueling our economic development. During COVID, we saw so many people in our community go above and beyond to create things that we were missing, like 3D printing, and the nurses just helping in the frontline workers, coming together. So how do these kids help critical think, and then attaching all that back to the workforce and the life sciences industry? So that's one way that we keep that innovation flame going and saying, hey, like always think out of the box. I think I am a huge like kind of straight person, and I tend to think out of the box too often. But when you do, you come up with these ideas that you recently were like, oh my God, that's awesome. And then that's how you make a difference in a community or in your school, or in your class, anywhere really.
Okay. Joseph, how do you apply what you just said of taking into consideration the generation needs? How specifically do you apply them to your programs? What has changed?
Yeah, it's to me, it's about being around the demographics that you serve. So I have two teenagers at home, right? I have a 14 and a 13, no, 15 and 13, And so, being exposed to them and being around them and seeing how they interact gives me kind of an advantage because I'm around that. Now, when school was in session and we could be in the classrooms and giving out workshops and Saturday workshops, that was different. Then we could actually interact with kids. So I almost feel like you have to know your audience and you have to be around them. You have to see their excitement. You have to see what they like, what they don't like, what's effective. And that's really where COVID came in, right? Like you can't really get that from a Zoom or a Teams. You just can't get that level of engagement within a classroom. So I feel like it's really about being around the population that you serve, so that you can get an indicator of like, yeah, this is effective, or what I'm saying or how I'm saying it is resonating with them. Are they asking questions? So COVID kind of really broke down that barrier, or made sure like, hey, you know what, you still have to find a way to engage with kids. And I work with a lot of nonprofits and organizations, and that's kind of been one of the big hurdles is like, God, engagement has taken a really we've taken a hit with engagement because and so what we did was we created SayWhat.tv, which was a platform that we can still reach kids with creative content. And that's really where we said, okay, look, if we can't talk to them in a classroom or on a Saturday workshop, how can we best communicate with them? We thought, well, let's create a news media platform for kids. And then so our goal is to grow our following so that way we can impact more kids through content. On top of that, we're looking at innovation when it comes to having kids create content for the platform. So, I'm 40 years old, right? There's only a certain amount of innovation that I can reach with kids. Why not have kids come up with innovative ideas and strategies? And so being around kids, hearing their ideas, sometimes they say, the dumbest thing. And then you go back home and you think about it and you're like, you know what, it really wasn't dumb. It was actually, behind that idea or behind that, what they were trying to say, made a lot of sense if you think about it from a business standpoint. So, being around kids and hearing them and providing them, that attention and showing them that you care will have them be able to share ideas. And so, I'm really optimistic about the future in this generation. I think they're something that we've never obviously witnessed before, but they're by nature innovative. So we as leaders in education need to hear them so that we can say, hey, that's what they like. Well, then let's meet them in the middle and then give them what they want to hear, right? So they're on TikTok. So, hey, we need to meet them in TikTok, and they're creative. So we need to be creative. And so I just think hearing them, being around them, gives us a competitive advantage to know, okay, this is what they want to hear. This is what they want to see. So how can we tailor? I think the innovation book that the MCA put out, I was going through it today and I was like, wow, this is the pages and the subjects are something kids are going to want to listen to. So I'm sure they did their like research and was like, hey, let's do this and let's do that. And so, but anyway, you have to be around kids. You have to hear them and then be innovative with what they want. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I would say that during this whole COVID thing, engagement has been really tough, as Joseph said. Sometimes I'll do virtual presentations with kids, and they do not compare to the way you engage with kids in person. So it's been very, very difficult. And I do have to say that creating videos has been easier to get more audience, as Joseph did, and as we're doing it on a monthly basis. Because now kids are like, oh, that's interesting. Like they're doing something fun for us. And now it's not just anybody else, just another Zoom call that they have to get on just for class or presentation.
Yeah, kids are smart, and you really need to keep your ears attentive to whatever they say, because yeah, they would give us innovators a lesson. So you could tell us what like significant impact have you seen on students? Like, could you give us some examples of what STEM education and innovation education does on kids? I would like to start again with Joseph. Sorry.
So what we've done is we've done a little bit of research on this area because COVID, it's not going. It basically impacted the way service delivery models are going to occur. If you can do 10 meetings in one day, doing Zooms and Teams and WebEx, or the old traditional way of doing 2 meetings a day when you're talking about traveling and lunch. So there's going to be even a faster acceleration of technology because of COVID. I mean, it already took place, right, with the teachers. And I always like to thank teachers. Any teachers on this call, thank you for everything that you guys are doing. So the acceleration of technology and the adoption went even more exponential than what was previously projected. So what I think, Alberto, is that you have a group of individuals that are riding this wave and are able to keep up. You also have some individuals that for various reasons cannot, and so I think that that there's it's a tricky question, man. But I do think that there's there is going to be some good that comes out of COVID-19 that will help education in general, but it will be innovative. So I like to pass this one also to Vianey to hear what she thinks, and then chime in after that.
Yeah, I mean, COVID just, I think, impacted our world, especially kids' world, tremendously. They were able to adapt very, very well, but I have to say it's a complicated question, because how do you know what your future holds? As we learned last year, our life can change from one day to the next. We went from people having meetings every day with people and socializing to the next day not even leaving your household. So kids and teachers were really resilient in this time, and I have to agree with Joseph. It's how we kind of go about the day, or how we kind of now structure our learning, because now you have half of these kids going to school in person and you have the other half going virtual. Where do you have the equity for both of these classes? You're going to know that maybe some of your virtual kids aren't going to learn the same way that your in-person kids are learning. Maybe they'll be doing other things on the computer that you just don't know. So where do you have that structure and that line of they're all learning equally? And then you have the next concept of testing. Now the huge idea of testing is that they all were on the same level when testing comes, but now you have these kids that are on completely different levels. Some are adapting better, some are not adapting as well. So where does that change? And I think where COVID stands is that it's going to teach us how to structure our education system better and be able to make it more adaptable to any sort of situation. Because there's never really going to be anything that's going to work. Something may work now, but it's not maybe going to work in the next 5 or 6 years. And it has to be how kids are being innovative and how we want them to be innovative. Us as leaders and our teachers and our parents, we're going to have to also be innovative in making sure that our kids know and are able to learn more thoroughly.
Okay, so COVID, as you've pointed out, it has both the pros and cons. The pros being that, yeah, the technology has taken leaps forward, and teachers have been transferring to teleeducation, and technology has made it easier for anybody anywhere to receive education. But also, on the other side, balanced out, is that we have a whole generation that will be scarred and will be mending what COVID did for the next couple of years. So generally speaking, you've mentioned a lot about the negative aspects of COVID. Where do you stand on a balance point on the good and bad of COVID? What do you think, like, moving forward?
I think we've worked really well to kind of adapt to the situation that we have, right? So one thing good about COVID is that we're no longer sticking with our regularly scheduled programming. Joseph has added a couple more different things in media. We added the workbook and virtual presentations, and we're hoping to do, some virtual STEM camps in the summer. So you're adding more and more to this kind of resource plate for the students and for the parents and for the teachers. So that's a great thing about COVID, is that we had to think out of the box to make sure that our kids were learning the same subjects and were able to keep up the momentum of teaching them about STEM, about AI, about life sciences, about keeping kind of that flame going. So COVID did have a good effect in that. And, now that with a lot of innovations that happen with COVID, specifically in the PPE field, you can now talk about that even more with kids. So you're not only just talking about the technology that they have in their hands, but now that's the PPE that they're having to put on their face, or their parents are having to put every day because they're in the frontline workers. And you get to kind of see that little kind of light bulb in their heads and say, oh, like, that's what innovation is. This is what COVID impacted my life, but this is what the good things happened because of that.
Okay. Joseph?
Yeah, I'm gonna show my age here, and I don't know if anybody here on this call remembers Skynet, which is in the Terminator movie, right? And Skynet was this technology, and there was good, and then there was bad. So technology and innovation, there's a balance between what's good and what's bad, right? Just because there's always in the human aspect that would, there's always two sides, right? So like artificial intelligence, right? If anybody has a bad intent to use that technology for bad purposes, they're going to do it, and then so how do you protect it from being detrimental to society? This acceleration technology, these kids this teachers, and everybody's learning faster than what historically would have been projected. But artificial intelligence is, you can't stop innovation. You can't stop technology. And so I think looking at this from an ethical and a standpoint of how do you change culture in the world to say, hey, we want to use these technologies for a greater cause, to impact climate change, to help COVID relief, not to use technology and artificial intelligence to turn profit in telemarketing industry or something like that. So, there's it's always human intent, but COVID-19 obviously trajectory-wise accelerate technology, but I think we need to also focus on that social emotional aspect of what kind of good things are we teaching kids, where once they're using these tools, they're doing them for the right reasons and the good causes, versus using these technologies for the bad causes and the not so good things. So, it's a fine line of, like I thought of Terminator when this question came up, because technology can be used for good, and it also can be, with bad actors, can be used for bad. So how do we as a community, as leaders, be able to instill that we're teaching our kids the good stuff to use technology and for good causes? So that's my answer to that question.
Okay. So what would be the main issues that someone, like parent or a teacher that's trying to teach their students innovation, what are the main issues that they should work around, the lessons learned that you've had on your programs?
Yeah,
Joseph?
if it's okay, I'd like to start this one. I think, Vianey, is it cool?
Yes, go for it.
So failure, kids are afraid to fail, and part of it is because of the applications that they've been on, the Candy Crushes, the incentives, the point systems, so when we talk to kids, or when we teach them entrepreneurship specifically, it's okay to fail. It's good to fail, actually, right? You don't want to destroy that that pureness of that kid to not want to pursue something because they failed at it the first time, and then their confidence goes down, and then they decide not to go into STEM, right? Or they don't decide to start their business because, hey, you know what, I failed. So I think from my professional expertise, Alberto, it's got to be, how do you, as a parent, as an educator, I don't want to say encourage failure, but also tell them, like, hey, it's okay to fail. Like, you learn from it and then you move on. So I don't mean in the sense of, okay, failing a grade, but, you know, giving kids that ability to, like the workbook that the MCA created, like not all the kids are going to get all those questions answered right. So how do you keep them encouraged to turn that next page so that if they failed that first page or they didn't get it, it's okay, move on to the next one. And so I think that's critical, man. I think we're hard on kids, and we're also kind of too hard on them in the sense of, you know, when they fail, we discipline them, as opposed to saying, you know, it's okay to fail. At least in entrepreneurship, it's okay to fail. You're not gonna, you know, be that unicorn right off the bat on your first innovation. You have to pivot and then learn from your mistakes. So I would say, you know, making sure that parents don't discourage through failure with their students or their kids.
Yeah, as Vianey mentioned, they're so accustomed to testing and having to have good grades that you only get like one chance at a test, and either you miss or fail. You pass or fail, and yeah, obviously they're accustomed to not wanting to fail, and yeah, that's a pretty good point. Vianey, would you like to add anything else?
Yes, I mean, failure, you know, I think everybody at one point in their life is going to experience failure. That's a huge way of how we learn and lessons learned, and how we say, okay, next time maybe I'm not going to do that, and I'm just going to adapt to the situation, right? But also I think for parents, is giving their kids as many experiences as possible. I think sometimes, especially now with such a focus on STEM careers, that we kind of lose track of everything else. You know, you just kind of like are focused on one path, when in reality there's many paths that you can take, and they don't, because they're so focused in one. So I always recommend, like when I'm giving presentations to high school students, I'm like, do as many experiences as you are, even if it's not in your degree, or even if it's not in your path or in your plan, because sometimes that one experience is going to change your life. And it can change it for the better, and you can decide to go into a whole different route that you didn't think about in the beginning, because you don't have that experience to bring you those lessons. And then I think, as you talked, Alberto, you talked about testing, and I know that a lot of the STEM kids are in like magnet schools, or they're in GT or IB programs, or in these really competitive programs that they're like, if I don't get an A, this is just not it, right? And I'm like, okay, yeah, an A is great, because we all want that 4.0 GPA, and we want to be top 10% of your high school class, or the top 10 senior at UTEP. But it's not just about getting that A, it's about experiencing that class, or figuring out, okay, wow, I really enjoyed that one subject, and then I enjoyed this other subject in this other class, and how can I merge them together to maybe find something that I like? So it's maybe like reducing the competitiveness, learning how to fail, and then learning how to experience life as it is, because I know this kind of sounds cliche, but you really just have one. So what do you want to do for the rest of your life where you're going to be happy and not just working or studying all the time?
Great. Joseph, do you want to add anything more?
No, I think we both shared our perspectives in it. You know, grades are important. We're not saying grades are not. Just to be clear for our educator friends, it's in the failure in the sense of practica and projects, right? Like but no, I think we covered it.
Yeah. Thank you. And also, as more of a creative question, how would you design like a future-proof plan, or not? Let's not say like forever in the future, like 10 years from now. What do you see would be important? Like, what's your opinion on the future of education? Vianey, I would like to start now with Vianey.
Yeah, of course. So future proof, I'm trying to think. I don't think there's going to be such a thing as future proof, because as we learned last year, we don't know what to expect, right? One day, some COVID came into our lives, January, and then by March we were shut down. So I think the idea of future proof we want to do it, but we are trying to be adaptable. So a plan that maybe you have in the next 10 years is I think it's something that Joseph touched on a couple of questions ago, is keeping up with that generation that you're trying to keep that audience to, right? So right now, TikTok is a huge thing, Instagram is a huge thing, being in social media is a huge thing. So how do you incorporate that into your program? So if we kind of keep going with each year, I think it's an idea of adapting that program to the way the year is going or the way your audience is going. So in my case, I work a lot with middle school students, not that many elementary or high school. So I have to kind of go in and say, okay, like I tried one program at that one point in the presentation. I'm like, that didn't really work out. I didn't get a lot of attention or eagerness or anything like that. But if we add the components that I know these middle school kids are really into, like I know in middle school, you get really competitive in games. So like, let's say like, what's that, Jeopardy? So how do we make that components that we talk about in MCA and make it into a game so they learn about it and they get to be competitive and get to play and learn all about it. So I think in the 10-year plan, I can't give you like a 10-year stretch of what I think the STEM camp is going to look like. I'm thinking like we want to reach as many kids as possible, but it's the fact that we have to plan for the year and then know that at one point or another, we may have to adapt and change the programming so that we can hit each kid and be able to say, this is what you're supposed to be learning, this is how it's supposed to go, and this is what you kind of want to be or would like to be or what it looks like to be in the life sciences industry. So it really is just, I think it's adapting.
Okay, Joseph?
Yeah, good points, Vianey. I'll follow that up with, if anything, if for the participants on this Tech Tuesday, if anything that they get from what I've shared, I think this is probably the most critical information that I can share would be what we've learned is this generation, this younger generation, Gen Z, is specifically interested in what they're interested in the sense of, we used to say, okay, what problem do you want to solve? And we used to start things like that, right? In STEM related entrepreneurship, what problem do you want to solve is typically the starting point. Well, what we found through our research is now it's not just about that, it's about what interest do you have as an individual. So, when you ask kids, start with, what are you interested in? Or even coworkers, when you're talking about innovation, like, what are you interested in? And if they say like shoes, cosmetology, medical, okay, so what issues or what problems can you solve within something that interests you? So going back to that small data, so you have to first understand that individual of what interests them, and then customizing your programming to tailor them. So I can be more effective now when I talk to kids, when I say, so tell me what things you like, and then you spend a little time on their interests. Well, then I can dive into what problems or what innovations do you know of, have you heard of within that specific, what we call as adults, industry. So you start with kids and interests that will lead to problems, and then you start to peel back the layers and get their engagement up. The second thing I would add futuristically for when you say fail-proof or future-proof, I'm gonna say climate change. It's real. And I don't hear enough of discussions going on about it here locally, but they're talking about it in big cities. So again, El Paso, we have to accelerate our culture and community to say, hey, you know what, climate change is coming. What are we doing locally to impact that? Because the generation, I've talked to kids, and they care about climate change. They know it's real. But what are we doing as leaders to build programs? And so I think of a futuristic, I think a wave of programs that are teaching kids how to address climate change, and how are we making it fun, exciting, but something that's also interesting. So that's how I feel the future programming. If Joseph Sapien wasn't here, tomorrow, I would hope that there was a culture and community around climate change, because I think it's coming fast. It's going to be here before we know it. And what are we doing to educate and program kids to solve these problems that are not here yet? So that's my thoughts on that.
If I can add just a little bit more to that, I think, Joseph, you kind of hit it right there in the ballpark when it came to problems, because climate change is a big one. But I think the question we also should ask kids is like, kids are always complaining about one thing or another, and they always see something wrong, things that we usually don't see. So maybe asking them like, what do you think the problem is this year, and how would you solve it? Or what do you see that you see wrong, and then you could solve it there? And that's how you also get that innovative thinking going around. So climate change is one, but then you have all these other ones like some kids become very political. I know I had a presentation not too long ago where we were talking about feminism and all these kind of political changes that we have in the air. So how do you kind of add that layer of questions and critical thinking and say, okay, you see that problem, how would you solve it? How would you make it a solvable problem that in 5 years, 3 years, you would actually have a solution and you'd be able to kind of put that out there in the community or in the region that you're located in?
Yeah, good point. Good point. I think that's you always start with problems. With what are you trying to solve, so yeah, I mean, we could spend all day on this Vianey and talk about like our work with kids and how to bring out their innovation. So yeah, I mean, it's exciting.
It is. Kids are innovative just in general, and
Yep.
I love talking to them because the thing, as you said, sometimes there's things they say and you're like, oh wait, that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
you have something going for you, kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would just like to remind everyone listening in that they can put questions in the chat box. We're almost only nearing the end of this Tech Tuesday. We just have time for a couple more questions. So I would like to ask you both, what like quick pointers and tips could you give teachers and educators? Like if you could give like a rapid bullet pointers for teaching innovation, being more innovative in the classroom. Joseph, would you like to start?
Yeah. So we know teachers have been instrumental this year with COVID-19 and then last year. So I typically always thank teachers and not a criticism. I would say more of a recommendation is like just keep researching cutting edge technologies and subscribing to Medium, subscribing to Harvard Business Review, making sure that you have a fingerprint and a pulse on outside of El Paso, because there's so much innovation going on that if you fall behind or you don't know about it, you're kind of you're not able to transfer that information inside the classroom on the Zoom. So I think teachers have done a tremendous job. I thank them every day anytime I see them. And the only suggestion I would recommend to them was just keep their fingerprints and their pulse outside of the region. Keep what's going on in Silicon Valley. I think Emma and the MCA, they always have to stay in the loop of what cutting edge technology is going on in healthcare, because that's the healthcare of our community that they have to make sure that these doctors and they're in the forefront of cutting edge technology. So for teachers, I'd say just figure out these newsletters, information sources that you can keep keep an eye on, so that you're making sure that you transmit that information to the students who probably know about it, but at least you're able to impact the masses of those students who don't know about it.
Vianey?
And to continue with that, I think as Joseph said, think outside of El Paso. Sometimes a lot of things happen in El Paso that we can interact here in our region, and we'll be able to implement that. But also keep an eye out with resources that are here in El Paso. I mean, there's so many outreach programs that are here for kids that I think that sometimes they kind of get lost in messages or emails or newsletters that are being sent to them constantly. And I know Joseph has an amazing program. We have a good program for students. UTEP has some awesome programs, and everywhere throughout El Paso, there's these really great STEM outreach programs that teachers are able to participate, like Texas Tech with the MedVenture for Your Future and different career fairs. And I think that the more students are able to participate in that, and the more teachers are able to participate in that as well, it opens up the kind of communication pipelines within innovation or AI within teachers, students, and the outreach resources that you're using to create that kind of added layer of curriculum in the classroom. And I have to say that teachers are doing an amazing job from day one, before COVID, pre-COVID, during COVID, and I know post-COVID it's going to be very different, but they really kind of integrated as much as they can and made their curriculum in their classroom as engaged as it is, they have a really hard job. And I sometimes think teachers are underappreciated. I'm like, no, you every day have to be on a Zoom call with kids in one class, kids at home. And I'm like, you really are pushing the limits, and we're all really thankful for taking care of our kids and our future generation of the workforce.
Great. So thank you very much, both of you, Joseph and Vianey. This has been a very interesting talk. I would just like to ask you both to please put your contact information in the chat box. So anybody that wants to get in contact with you has the means to do it. Again, promoting the STTE Foundation has a lot of programs that in their website that anybody can reach out, and Vianey has put in her email. She's always welcoming and very open to talking with everyone else. So with this, we're coming to an end on this Tech Tuesdays, Fueling Innovation Through Education. I would like to thank everybody who joined in and listened to this great talk. And also, I would like to invite you all to the next Tech Tuesday. Is going to be Fueling Innovation Through Relationships. We're gonna talk with Ivan Huerta and Teresa Rockwell about how networking and connecting people fuel innovation. So thank you, everyone, and have a great evening and rest of the week.
Thank you. Good job, Vianey. Good job, everybody.
Thank you.
Alberto, thank you, Joseph, for joining me in this talk.
Yeah, thank you, Vianey. We'll meet up.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
You guys are
Good
awesome.
job,
Thank
everyone.
you for what you do.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emma.
Thanks, everyone.
Great job, Vianey.
Thank you.